And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast from the Classic Auto Mall studio in beautiful downtown Morgantown, Pennsylvania. And not Morgantown, West Virginia. Remember, we had that happen a couple of times where a guy was shipping a car here. He goes, I'm here, but I don't see Morgantown Road. And I'm like, where is here? And he goes, Morgantown. I go, Morgantown where? Morgantown, West Virginia.
The bigger Morgantown.
A little bigger Morgantown. So he was not too happy. I think that he had gotten bad information or something along those lines. But anyway, our special guest in the studio today is Tobey Ross, the co-chair and president of the Radnor Hunt Concours d'Elegance. See, I even said all that big word. I'm pretty hip here. So, Tobey, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Stewart. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
Tobey and I also serve on the board at the Boyertown Museum, which is such a great place. I mean, it's really an amazing place in Boyertown, which is about 45 minutes northeast of here. And talk about one of those a diamond in the rough, if you will. It really is. And more people need to know about it because its historical significance to cars produced or, have a connection to Pennsylvania. And that's what I love about that place is that it has a theme, if you will. It's not just a bunch of old cars in the building.
It really is a hidden gem.
Yeah.
And we've been working together to help get the word out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, museums are a tough sell. Usually, the husband and wife show up and the wife doesn't really want to go and you got to kind of convince her that it's going to be more than just a car lined up in a row in a dusty old room. There's a history there, and you're going to recognize things that you didn't realize that your uncle had or your cousin had, and the same thing happens here, where you see that. But, and then they have electric cars from the early 1900s there. I mean, golly.
There's a lot more than cars.
Oh, yeah, the diner that they have. That
diner, 1920s Sunoco gas station, all kinds of trucks and artifacts.
Oh, just
tools
amazing.
And license plates.
Right.
And they just purchased an original vintage Pennsylvania Turnpike toll booth.
I love that.
Which we got from the Smithsonian. And that's going to be reconstructed and put up in the museum. All kinds of really cool stuff like that. I was there yesterday for the Cars and Cones event. Got there a little bit early and it was quiet, and I really had a nice walk around the museum.
Sure.
Again, and it's just every time you go in there, you see something else that you didn't see before.
It's one of those things that when people see it, they really are blown away by it. And it's hard, we're car guys. We've seen a little bit of everything. It's not always easy to blow us away when you see something, but that place does to me. And especially they have a blacksmithing shop up there, which is really cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, and then the wooden floors from, the early 1900s that are still in place. And but the toll booth is interesting because it was with the Smithsonian, but it was in some warehouse in some suburban area or whatever. It was really a fascinating story on where they found it and how it came to be, and how many people want an old toll booth from Pennsylvania Turnpike. It's not something high on most people's list to put in their basement, right?
Unique for the Boyertown Museum for sure. It's
absolutely, it's absolutely perfect for them. And we just had a car that we sold to them. That was the Vim truck. That was one of the ones that my partner had, and they didn't have one of those. And so we always said, look, you can have first dibs on it if you want it. And of course they did. And everything in there has some connection to Pennsylvania, except for some special display stuff that we're kind of starting to try to incorporate there. Right now, there's the DeLorean, a replica of the DeLorean from Back to the Future, and that's been hugely successful. They've increased attendance and recognition, and
everybody should check it out. It's really a great destination place.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, your involvement is with that, but most importantly, or more of your full-time job, is the Radnor Hunt Concours d'Elegance, right?
Oh yeah, and it is now a full-time job. I retired from my career 2 years ago, and I've never been busier.
Right. Well, I guess that's a good thing, though, right? If you don't play golf, or you don't fish, or you don't have some kind of something to keep you busy,
oh yeah,
you're gonna drive the wife crazy. And what are you gonna do? Watch Jeff? My grandfather, at 91 years old, finally said to his doctor, he said, "I'm not quitting smoking." He says, "I got smoking, drinking, and Jeopardy. That's my whole life." And at least with something to do, and it's car related, so you get to do that. How many years have you been involved with the Radnor?
Oh, I've been involved from the beginning.
Right. Yeah. Which was 1990.
1997.
Wow.
It actually goes back to 1988.
Right.
When a fascinating promoter gathered a bunch of car guys together in Philadelphia to try to recreate the Vanderbilt Cup races in Fairmount Park in Philadelphia.
Right.
We put together the Philadelphia Vintage Grand Prix Association. He was great at getting everybody together, all kinds of interesting car people from the area. And we put on vintage races in Fairmount Park from '89 to '95.
Oh, wow.
Politics and the neighborhood and costs caught up with us, and we were never able to secure enough sponsorship to make it a go. So that ended in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1996, a guy named Bill Warner founded the Amelia Island Concours.
Right.
And our Radnor Hunt founder and chairman, Mike Tilson, was invited to be a judge there in year one. And then through 1996, all of us that had been working on the Philadelphia Grand Prix said, what are we going to do with ourselves?
Right.
Geez, all of a sudden we got all the spare time. Mike was also a member of the Radnor Hunt and a fox hunter, and he's been in the car business, professional race car driver, and car restoration and dealer broker for many, many years, his whole career. But he had another real passion in fox hunting and the equestrian world over at Radnor Hunt. And they simultaneously said, we need something else to do here at Radnor Hunt. We could use another event. And Mike said, well, how about if we have a little automotive garden party?
Right.
So he gathered us all back up again, and in 1997, all of us and a few of our friends brought our own cars over. I think we had about 35 cars. And all of us judged them, and we declared it the first annual Radnor Hunt Concours.
And what was your familiarity with concours prior to that? I mean, did you know a lot about it? You'd heard of them? Had you been to one? Had you been to?
Actually, I've been to an awful lot of car shows.
Right.
Like many of us in the area, I was a regular at the New Hope Auto Show from when I was 12 years old, and the Hershey Hill Climb, which were the two main events we had in the area. But I went to lots of car shows in the area, but not the formal concourses.
Right.
In fact, I was going out to the Monterey Historics in Laguna Seca in California for many years to watch the race cars. And I was aware that there was this concourse thing on the other side of the peninsula over there at Pebble Beach. And I thought, geez, I don't know whether that's something I want to do or not. So when we started up the Radnor Hunt in '97, I began to think more about going to concourses and started going to more of them. And of course, the Radnor Hunt is modeled after the grandfather of U.S. concourses, is Pebble Beach.
Pebble Beach, absolutely.
So yeah, my awareness of concourses was on a very steep learning curve at that moment. And here we are 27 years later.
It's amazing.
And
of course, the Radnor Hunt Concours d'Elegance is probably in the top 5 concours in the country, or maybe in the world for that matter. It's in the same category. Same breadth as Amelia and Pebble and Greenwich and all the ones that have been around for long. I guess long is a relative term. Pebble Beach started in the 50s.
1950.
But not many of us really knew much about that part of the world, or not that part of the world, that world of concours cars. There was guys, Tiny Gould knew about it, and Tom Barrett and Jackson and all those guys all understood it and knew about it, but it was such a kind of a secret boys club kind of thing back then. And of course now it's grown into, Pebble Beach is unbelievable.
It really has grown. It's exploded in the last 25 years. There's so many events now, but thank you. I hope we are in the top 5.
Absolutely. I see that, and you just hit on something. There's so many of them. Is there room for all of these, or are we over contouring the world, or the U.S. anyway?
Well, we do fret about that.
Sure.
I think perhaps we are over contouring.
Right.
It is certainly core to the baby boomer generation.
Right.
And we're all going to begin to slow down.
Sure.
We do see that trend a little bit. The collectors are saying, I went to 6 events last year, I'm only going to do 5 this year.
Right.
So there's a slow, steady creep in that kind of thing.
Sure.
But on the other hand, there's a lot of work going on to try to enhance the popularity of these things and pivot them a little bit toward younger generations.
Exactly.
And to slightly newer cars. So that's the sort of thing we talk about all the time in our organizational meetings. How can we be sure to stay at the forefront?
Right.
And what are the trends with people and cars? And so far, it's just going great.
It's working.
We're fully subscribed again this year, as
That's
we have
great.
been every year. we're able to select the best cars and the best judges and the best entrants. So
Sure.
We're still really, really happy.
Well, and people don't realize is it's, you know, to enter your car in a concours is it's expensive. I mean, you got to get your car there. You've got to make sure that it's got one of those details on it that Tim McNair does, and you know, you've got to. There's a lot more to it, and there's no prize money per se. Kind of reminds me of offshore boat racing back in the day when these guys would spend millions of dollars, and there was no, you know, the prize was $7,500. Well, that was one prop. You know?
Absolutely, yeah,
You know, that's changed a lot. So how do we get the audience to shift on these things? You mentioned, newer model cars, cars from maybe the 80s and 90s and that generation, like we've seen. But I mean, how do we get the younger kids involved in this hobby? How do we perpetuate that? Because eventually the newer cars are going to be the old generation in 20 years or whatever it is. So.
It's a real delicate balance,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what we are working hard on, and I hope remaining in the forefront. The formal concourses like Radnor Hunt and Pebble Beach and Amelia Island are differentiated by being invitational,
Right.
and a curated collection of cars.
Right.
You'll never see a row of Corvettes or a row of Mustangs or a row of anything.
Right.
It's a carefully selected group of cars to represent a little bit of each.
Sure. Sure.
And the owners are, of course, the honored guests.
Absolutely.
They, as you say, they spend a great deal of time and money, a shocking amount of time and money to come. And the judges that are well known around the country and around the world, they too spend a great deal of their own money to come.
Sure.
and devote their expertise to the show. So these formal invitational concourses like ours are trying to, or tending to stay mid-1970s and older.
Right.
Trying not to go too much newer than that for the formal judged concourse. That's what the entrants still prefer.
Sure.
And that's what the spectators seem to prefer.
Sure.
But all of the concourses, including ours, have got other events alongside.
The
we
rally.
have what we call the motorsport park.
Mm-hmm. Right. I love that.
Yeah. We have 100 cars in our concourse, in our judge concourse, but in the field right adjacent to it, there's another 200 to 300 cars.
Right.
Which can be, and often are, much newer.
Right.
And appealing to a younger crowd.
Well, and that gives you something, a variety to see instead of just seeing all the same kind of stuff, if you will. So
Absolutely. And
so-
all the major concourses have got those,
Absolutely.
those side events.
When we return, we'll talk a little bit more about the Concours and some of the other things in the car hobby when we return to the Classic Auto Mall podcast. See you in a minute. And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast from the Classic Auto Mall studio in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, with my good buddy Tobey Ross, co-chair and president of the Radnor Hunt Concours d'Elegance. You were talking about with the motorsports area and then the Concours area. The thing I like the most about the Concours d'Elegance is, whether it's yours or any of them that you go to, is the variety of cars, A. B, the fact that you don't really know the cars that are coming ahead of time. I mean, I guess you could get on the website, but I never like to do that. I like to be surprised at what I see at a Concours. I think there should remain that mystery, if you will, of what's going to be there. Listen, if I know that it's a good and well-run event, I'm not worried about what, I know they're going to get great cars. I know that.
Yeah.
But forget about those two areas. How about the parking lot? My goodness, the cars that you see in the parking lot, especially in where this happens to be. There's a little money in that part of the world, I suppose.
Oh yeah, there is. It's a good demographic for our sponsors and vendors and advertisers. But yeah, absolutely. The concourse and the motorsport park on Sunday are just that's the pinnacle.
Mm-hmm.
But Saturday we run a road rally. And we have a Cars and Coffee, sponsored by the Classic Auto Mall.
Well, there you have it. Gosh,
Thank you very much.
Yes, happy
and
to do
hundreds
it.
of cars show up for those, and it is just a constant overload all weekend of incredible cars.
Sure. People don't realize, and we talk about this all the time, what car culture means in this part of the world. It's as good as anywhere in the world, I would argue. It's amazing. I mean, because of the historical stuff, you start with all the old drag strips that started out back in the 50s and 60s, and then you factor in the AACA and Hershey and all that it has to offer, and Carlisle, and you know, all these things, and then of course just the car guys that were involved in the day, from, you know, all the guys at Algar, Phil Tegmeyer and Kirk White, who, Mike Tilson, who, you know,
and I worked there too.
No kidding.
Yeah. Everybody who's involved in this world has done time in Algar.
I'm jealous. I never got to work there. I want to. Yeah. Now it's just Ferrari of Philadelphia or something. I guess they lost the Algar name, but has it been a while? I don't know. It just kind of happened, didn't it? Or did it? I don't know. Did I miss something? I missed the memo.
Yeah, the RDS group purchased Algar.
Gotcha.
And they're moving it to Newtown Square.
Right.
And the Piazza Group has purchased the Algar old Durham Body Company building, and is going to move another franchise in there.
Interesting.
So yeah, there's a lot of moving around in that area, and of course they're all our sponsors.
Right,
so
right, absolutely.
We thank them very much.
And are they moving to a bigger location, the Ferrari store? Is that going to be a bigger facility?
It's moving into what was RDS's portion of the main line building.
Oh, gotcha.
After they moved into the brand new building next door.
Right next door, yeah. That's amazing. The main line of, you know, you just sit on a park bench right out there and watch all kinds of cars on any given day at any time. It's just, there's an amazing parade of cars going by, and of course, you know, that's the main line is amazing. And if you're not familiar with the Philadelphia area, the main line looks like you're in a deep south neighborhood with hills and valleys and trees, and you're 10 minutes from Philly.
Yeah,
it's just amazing, some of the neighborhoods that you see around here, and then some of the hardware that's there as well too. Do you, you know, when you have guys like the Ferrari guys and all that, do you see more Ferraris in the Concours or less? I mean, how does that work? Do you try to pick and choose based on what? What is the kind of the criteria that you look for a Concours car?
Well, we have a really great car selection committee.
Right.
That each year meets and decides what the featured marks will be for the following year.
Right.
And we mix it up. We have a historical list of the cars that have been featured, and we have a long list of cars that could be featured in the future.
Oh, that's nice.
It's that's a valuable valuable document that we maintain, and all the concourses do that. They're looking several years out as to what are going to be the featured marks. And of course, the car clubs and the car enthusiasts of the featured marks are always a little bit more engaged, a little bit more interested.
Sure.
When we feature Ferraris of any description in the concourse, the Ferrari Club has a big presence at the Motorsport Bar.
Sure.
Feature Porsche has a
right.
And so forth, yeah. So, that's a big part of pivoting toward younger generations too.
Mm-hmm. Sure, because you certainly see a younger generation. You see all demographics, it seems like, in Ferrari, and I don't mean demographics, more age groups that you see in Ferraris. You see 20-somethings still buying Ferraris, and you see guys in their 60s and 70s still driving Ferraris, and everything in between. And I know that there's been some beautiful ones in the past at the Radnor. Oh my gosh, some of the Ferraris that you guys have had in the past were just ones that you've never seen, and in a color, you know, like a deep blue or a different color than you would normally see a Ferrari in.
Well, yeah, we had a feature which was Ferraris that are not red.
Right. How apropos! I just stumbled upon this. See, Steve, I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Smart, like.
And that was really fun. Really fun and popular.
What? So, how do you go about? You just call the guy with the Ferrari, and say, "Hey, we want you to come be at the Radnor." I mean, how does that process work? How do you get them to do?
Well, fortunately, after 26 years. An awful lot of people find us.
Right.
They send. We have an application process on our website. It's applying for an invitation.
Sure.
So those applications come in year round,
right.
And our committee vets them and decides which we can accept.
Right.
We also do go out and solicit lots of cars and collectors who we know well.
Sure.
There's a strong industry of people that go to concourses, and many of the collectors have multiple cars, and we will look for whatever might be appropriate for this year, or whatever they. In some cases, some of our collectors are so great and have so many wonderful cars. We'll literally say, "So, what's clean and near the door?"
And we'll start.
Yeah, right.
That's the funny thing, is that's usually the criteria for most of us. What's the cleanest, nearest to the door, and won't give us any trouble if we try to start it.
Exactly.
And there's some great, when you go to the other events, you see the same cadre of people that are at one event, at the next event, and the next event, and so on and so forth. And so.
Yeah, you do. There's a lot of collectors that like to go to many events, and so we do see them. And somewhat the same with the judges.
Sure.
The entrance collectors like to see judges that they're familiar with, that they know and trust, that have the knowledge and experience to make the right choices, and to feel confident that in those choices. Because as you said, entering a concourse has no money involved. You get a trophy. But a
nice trophy.
Very nice. Yeah. But what you do get is the recognition that your car won a class award or a best of show, hopefully, which does enhance the resume of that car.
Absolutely.
And can increase that car's value in some cases if that's what you're looking for. And there's another aspect of it that it's a competition. Just like entering any kind of a competition. And lots of people are really very passionate about that. It's what motivates them.
And what's interesting is to watch wealthy guys who wouldn't sit still for 5 minutes sit for hours beside their car at a concours and talk about it, talk to people about it. Do you find that in judging a concours, the guy who has the unlimited knowledge of that car versus the guy who doesn't know a whole lot about his car, how does that weigh into the factor when you're deciding on who's the winner?
The presentation of the car to the judges is very important. And there are some people that are extremely good at presenting their car. A concise 2-minute explanation, carefully answered questions. And in some cases, if they need to show documentation of something that the judges want to understand better, have it at their fingertips, have the explanation and can explain it clearly. That helps. But it is about the car. It's about the car's history, provenance, how does it present on the field in that particular day. Judges are vastly experienced and can recognize the best cars pretty quickly. But then we look at all the details on every car. Everybody gets this equal amount of time, and then the decisions are made by the judges with some deliberation in the judges' meetings.
And of course, you got 10 perfect Duesenberg J models all in a row. I always ask this question of judges at concours, and I usually get the same answer: is that they all look perfect, but once you start really drilling down, you're going to find some that step up a little bit above the crowd. The 10-footer rule doesn't apply here because you guys are scrutinizing these cars. You're looking at the 10-inch rule, not the 10-foot rule.
That's absolutely right.
And I bet it's hard. I bet it comes down to, personal preference and likes a little bit in some degree. If you've got two that are all things being equal, how do you pick between the blue one and the red one?
It's extremely rare for two cars to be exactly equal.
Really? That's interesting to me.
In marked club judging, Porsche Club, Ferrari Club, Jaguar Club, you can get down to very, very small details. I recall judging two very early 911s. One was a 64, one was a 65 911 at the concourse on the Avenue in Carmel. And these two cars were presented by two very well-known restorers, and they were both perfect. Absolutely.
And that's hard to say.
Perfect. One of them had reproduction reproduction screwdrivers in the toolkit. That was the difference between the cars. And we told both owners, this is where we are. And they both said, yep. It's where it is.
It is what it is. I love that,
But I would much rather, I judge at a number of events every year and enjoy that process very much. But it is easier when you have an eclectic group of 8 or 10 cars that you're looking at. It's easier to pick one that stands out than when you have 10 Duesenbergs.
And you try to avoid having 10 J model Duesenbergs, right? I mean, that's, you see that maybe in Amelia just because they have 200 cars instead of 100, so they have to allow maybe a little more duplication that you might see in other Concours d'Elegances. But it's funny. This hobby is amazing, and the people that you meet is what is the icing on the cake of this whole deal, because the cars are fantastic and I love that, but the people. I mean, to sit and have dinner at the Radnor, sitting next to Chuck Cantwell, the father of the GT350, and just, that's like pinch yourself stuff,
Absolutely.
And maybe not everybody knows who he is, but if you're in the car business, you know who he is.
Sure do.
And a great guy. And another one that we just lost last year, Bob Ingram, from North Carolina, who was probably the preeminent Porsche collector in the world? I mean, would that be overstating that?
It wouldn't be, certainly in the U.S.
Yeah, certainly in the U.S. There may be some.
He was a consummate gentleman.
Oh.
He was a wonderful, wonderful man. I was proud to be acquainted with him.
Sure.
And proud to have them come and be featured at our show last year.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah,
That's absolutely right.
He and his sons, Cam, really do a tremendous job at Road Scholars. Their cars are amazing, and they've won multiple times at Pebble Beach.
Sure. And of course, that probably has something to do with it too. I mean, who did the restoration is
Sure.
important as well too. When we return, we'll talk all things automotive. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with Tobey Ross and at the Classic Auto Mall podcast. See you. And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast from the Classic Auto Mall studios in Morgantown, Pennsylvania. You can catch us on all of the sites that are out there. iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Podcast Index, Buzzsprout, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like the where we sold cars to.
Yeah.
And if you don't remember who you are, then you just go down and ask the lady at the desk. She'll tell you who you are. That's why I have the little sign over there that says your host, Stewart Howden, so I can remember who I am. So anyway, we're visiting with Tobey Ross, the co-chair and president of the Concours d'Elegance in fantastic Radnor, at the Radnor Hunt. Man, that place is a beautiful setting for a Concours, isn't it? Could you find a better spot?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And it's unique in that it's an equestrian facility. An awful lot of concourses are on golf courses,
Yeah,
which are always beautiful.
sure.
But to my knowledge, we're the only one that's at an equestrian facility, and that connection between horses and cars and horsepower and
Right, exactly.
is,
And the carriages that you feature, at where do those come from? From collectors as well too, do they? Or are they there? Do they have them at the facility?
no, it's another group of collectors.
Right.
There's another whole world of people that collect and show carriages,
Yeah.
horse-drawn carriages, and they love to put on a carriage drive, much the way we put on a rally.
Sure.
And they organize one for us every year. Of course, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of good friends, a lot
Sure.
of members of Radnor Hunt.
Our buddy who's on the board with us at Boyertown has a nice carriage collection.
That's right. That's right. And a lot of overlap in the equestrian world with the Devon Horse Show as well.
Sure.
But yeah, they put together a carriage drive, which is timed to arrive at the Radnor Concours at noon.
Right.
And shortly after that, Mike Dilson organizes a running of the hounds with the fox hunters
Sure.
in their formal scarlets, which incidentally are also very much encouraged to be worn at our black tie gala on
Sure,
Saturday night.
sure.
So we love to see some fox hunters out there in their red.
I'd like to fox hunt just so I could wear that outfit. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool looking.
it's
I don't know you could get away with it many places, but it's pretty cool looking. But I always jokingly say if somebody says they've got, I just bought a new Duesenberg Model J, and I'll say, I got a pet fox. I don't know where that comes from. Anyway, the Radnor Hunt Concours d'Elegance is held September 8th, 9th, and 10th this year. So that's coming up in a few weeks from our air date here, our first air date of August, 19th, 2023. And they can go to the website and get more information, obviously.
Yes, there's loads of information on the website at radnorconcours.org.
.org. And so if somebody's interested in putting their car in the Concours, I mean, you're looking for unique coach built cars, you submit something. What's the process? You call them up and say, hey, we're considering you. Hey, you're in. How does that work?
First of all, if you want to submit a car for the Concours right now, you're submitting it for the 2024 Concours.
There you go. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Good. We're full.
Yeah. But yeah, you fill out the form. It comes to me and Mike Tilson and members of our car selection committee. We all review it. We ask you to send photographs. And then in short order, within a few days or a week or so, we send a reply.
Sure.
With
yes or no,
yep,
or yeah.
Yep.
And you give them an explanation why no? I mean,
Sure. Absolutely. Always.
Your car sucks?
No, we would never say that.
Okay, all right. I didn't think so. I just needed to say something funny.
Yeah.
It's usually something pretty clear.
Or we already have one. We're full.
I'm sorry, it's a little bit too new. It's,
Right.
It's not something that fits within our features this year, and then we will refer you to the Motorsport Park, to the rally, and
Sure.
to the Cars and Coffee, and other events throughout the weekend.
Sure.
And sometimes it's just simply a question of saying we'd rather have you come next year.
Right. We think it would fit better for what we're going to do for next year.
Right.
And of course, you have the wonderful black tie dinner on Saturday night, the barbecue on Friday night.
Barbecue on Friday night with a demonstration of the Thorncroft mainstreamers,
Right.
the youngsters who put together a beautiful little demonstration of their horses.
Right.
The Thorncroft Equestrian Center in Melbourne is our beneficiary.
Sure.
And we've a many-year relationship with them. We're very proud of them, and they do a great job. They also organize a silent auction,
right?
Which
is one of the better silent auctions of all the concours that we go to.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you
enjoy
very
that
much.
one. I never get to buy anything because there's too many rich guys there.
There were a couple of really great things there this year.
Oh, good.
Some really neat experiences.
You know me. I like jackets mostly. I see at some of the concours I buy jackets, but yeah, I love that. And Thorncroft, for those that don't know about Thorncroft, tell us a little bit about that.
It's a therapeutic riding facility for people of all abilities. It helps kids with special needs,
Sure.
wounded warriors. Being on horseback is a remarkably healing experience. And please check their website too.
Sure.
There's an awful lot of information there.
Yeah.
That is a really wonderful organization, worthy place for us to support. And the relationship with horses and Radnor Hunt, it all just fits together so well.
Perfectly,
It's
yeah.
a marriage made in heaven.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And of course, the other thing that we might take note of is that neither one of you or I are at Pebble this year because it's starting this week. And are you going or not?
I've been going to Pebble for many, many years, last dozen years or so. I'm not going this year because our son is getting married on Pebble Beach weekend, which...
Do you not give him a list?
I did. Yeah, he did not put the wedding on the Radnor Hunt weekend.
Right. Well,
anything other than that was okay.
Was a fair game. I remember when I got married one time, I had to get married on a Monday because my father-in-law, it was the only day that he could take off was Monday. So nice. But
right.
yeah. So
yeah, I'm going to miss it this year though. That is a fantastic week.
Sure. Well, congratulations on the upcoming
Thanks.
Nuptials. And so tell me one car that stands out to you at the Radnor over the years. Is there one that really got your attention more than anything? Is there one that says, God, that's the car I'd love to own if I could?
I don't think I could pick one.
It's like picking your favorite, right?
Yeah. We've had a couple of Durham body Duesenbergs,
Right.
which are certainly favorites of mine. I've always loved Duesenbergs. The Durham Body Company is, of course, the building that Algar Ferrari was in all these years.
And Mike Tilson worked at Durham,
Mike
didn't
worked there, I worked there, Kurt White worked there, Philip Pegmeyer worked there, Dave Olympi worked
Right,
there. We were all
everybody.
there. Yeah. But so yeah, a Durham Body Duesenberg is I think pretty special. We've had a few of them over the years.
Right.
I'm a Porsche enthusiast.
Right.
The cars that Bob Ingram brought to us last year
Yeah.
were very special to me
Yeah.
personally.
Sure.
But gosh, the cars we've had over the years.
Who's who of cars?
Yeah,
Right?
it really is. It really is.
Can you in your mind pick the best of show before any of the judging is done just by looking at the cars? Can you say that one's probably going to win?
No.
Really? That's interesting to know.
No. When you walk onto a show field, ours or anybody else's, the candidates for best of show usually jump out at the experienced judges.
Right.
We all have fun talking about that. So what do you think? We say, well, did you see this? And
Right.
did you see that? And we all pretty much agree, yeah, there's 3 or 4 that are obvious standouts. They have that right look and feel, and it's the right time and the right place, and so forth. It's rare that we actually all guess or agree what the actual best of show is, and frequently it's a surprise.
Sure. And that's awesome.
As it should be.
As it should be, absolutely.
Yeah.
Does it get heated in there ever? Do you get arguments, people going at each other on, I think it should be this one and I think it should be this one, or is it usually a consensus by the time you get to the nuts and bolts of it?
Yeah, I'd say it's never heated.
Right.
We have fun and interesting conversations. We hear different points of view.
Sure.
But it's a great group.
Oh, it's
of people that are
amazing
judging meetings. So there's always good decorum.
Sure. Well, and it's not like everybody's first time doing something. This is not jury duty. This is
no, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, we're doing this for, again, we're not splitting atoms. We're trying to have fun here.
Right.
Can you give us any taste of what may be coming up this year? Any sneak preview of a particular car that's going to be in the concours that we could Feel like we got the inside information on?
Well, one of our features is Pierce Arrow,
Right.
our main features, and we've got a great collection of cars. Our friends at the Three Dog Garage are
Yes.
sending a couple.
Nice.
We've got a beautiful car coming from Canada. Our friends at the AACA Museum are sending a fascinating car sedan. Those are going to be special.
Has a Pierce ever won Best in Show at Radnor?
I believe it has.
Oh.
We featured Pierce, I think it was 2007.
What an interesting car company.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. We're also featuring Lincoln Continentals pre-war and post-war.
Right.
And there's going to be a couple of very special ones of those coming
Nice.
too.
Nice.
Some very rare ones. So that's going to be interesting. And are you familiar with HRGs?
No, I don't
Uh-huh.
think I am. Well,
Gotcha.
you stumped me. Can we edit this?
HRG is a British sports car from the immediate post-war period.
Really?
Late 40s, early 50s.
I don't think
They
I've
look a
ever-
bit like MGT series cars.
Right.
That sort of open fenders. And
Right.
but a smaller company.
Sure.
Fewer number of cars. And
Right.
we have some friends who own HRGs.
Right.
And they asked if they could curate a class. We said, great.
Oh, awesome.
And,
That's
we
that's
have-
cool.
Yeah. And we have, I think, 7 coming.
Wow.
It's we probably never had 7
Right.
HRGs in one place.
It's like a
at the
gaggle.
same time. Yeah. So
That's
you
a-
definitely want to look at that.
Yeah, and I see that you're featuring BMW 507 and Z8s as a
Ooh.
pairing kind of
Yeah.
thing. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I love the Z8. That's one of the cars on my list.
And 507s are special too.
Oh my goodness! Gosh, they have escalated in value so much. I mean, I'm old school talking about this because this has been going on for years. But I mean, for a while they were really underappreciated, and then boom!
They were.
Oh
They
my
were.
God! Then one broke, $2 million or something. Everybody went, "What?
Yeah.
We might want to look into the one that's sitting in the corner of the garage."
Yeah. No, there's interesting stories behind that.
Sure. Yeah.
And in fact, some of us in the Radnor Hunt group were involved, I should say, in the
Yeah.
escalation of the final recognition of the correct valuation of 507s. I think that's what you put it.
And you work closely with Dave Kinney from time to time on valuations and things like that. You see something out of place, or he sees something a little out of whack, or whatever.
Yeah, he's the guy. He's the go-to guy.
He's the guy, isn't he? I love Dave. Dave is the greatest guy.
Yeah,
we've had him on the show, and he's like, "Listen, call me. Listen, 10 minutes before. If I'm free, I'll be on the show. I don't care. I'm happy to talk about anything. You gotta love guys like that.
Oh, yeah.
Just at the drop of the hat, he'll.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. You can call me anytime.
Yeah, well, I love that. See, I'm going to put you on the call
Sure.
anytime list.
Sure,
And,
please do.
Yeah,
Please
we
do.
love talking cars with all of our car buddies, and love talking to people that have the passion for the events that you put on, and talk about expensive to do and expensive to be involved in if you're a vendor, or if you're a judge, or if you're a car owner. But it's also your time and money and expense too. It's not, you don't get paid for this, and this is something you do because you love it.
And that's absolutely right. And in fact, one of the things we're very proud of with the Radnor Hunt Concours is that it is still a very all volunteer and completely independent, just for the benefit of our designated charities.
Absolutely.
We have no corporate allegiances.
Sure.
We're all doing it for the love of it.
Absolutely, and that's the way it should be. RadnorConcours.org, RadnorConcours.org is the website. And you can get all kinds of information. You buy tickets on the website.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. So anyway, thank you so much for being on the show. We've been threatening to do this for a while, and I'm glad we finally did it. And we'd love to have you back anytime.
Totally my pleasure.
All right. Thanks for
Thank you very
listening.
much.
We'll catch you next time on the Classic Auto Mall podcast.